Svabodhe nanyabodhecha bodharupatayatmanaha nadipasyanyadipecha yatasvatma prakashane. Svabodhe, to know itself, na, not, anyabodhecha, need for other knowledge, bodharupatya, because its form is knowledge itself, Ātmanaha, one's own, na, not, dipasya, for a lamp, anyadipecha, need for another lamp, yata, just as, svatma prakashane, to illumine itself. Ātman, being consciousness itself, does not need another instrument of consciousness to illumine itself, just as a lighted lamp does not need another lamp to manifest its light.
Namaste. So, Svabodhe, the self-knowing one, Brahman, na anya bodhe itcha, does not desire another instrument of knowledge or consciousness to know itself. Svabodhe, it knows itself automatically. And why is that? Because there's no division in Brahman between a subject and the object, between the knower and the known, between the knower and the act of knowing. No, they're all one. So just like the other day I made the example, if something's going on in your finger, you don't need a finger scanner to tell you about it. You know, you can feel it directly. So in the same way, Brahman knows itself completely by the instrument of its own consciousness. So there is no need for Brahman to have a mirror. It already knows itself. See, this brings up the problem or the question of why is there Maya? Why does Brahman need to be reflected in so many upadhis? And the final answer after reading through all of Shankara's commentaries is that it's inexplicable. Inexplicable, beginningless, and unconditioned. So Maya herself is unconditioned, but she creates the conditioned world. How is that? Through duality. In duality, the consciousness is separate from the body. The body becomes the object of the consciousness, and then we know it through the process of knowing. It's actually a triplicity. The knower, the knowledge, and the known. But for Brahman, that's not true because Brahman is everything. So it automatically knows everything, just like you know what's going on in your finger without having to even look at it. What to speak of getting some other instrument, to reflect the finger or so, it's unnecessary. So in the same way, Brahman knows everything that's going on in itself and in the universe simply by default, by definition. It can't be explained, just like Maya can't be explained. Because to have an explanation, you have to have an object, a verb, and a subject. And there is no such duality in Brahman. Brahman's knowledge is all-pervading because its consciousness is a kind of self-consciousness that knows itself without becoming an object. This is really hard to grasp for a person who's conditioned by material consciousness. So the example is given, just as a lighted lamp does not need another lamp to reveal it, isn't it? The lamp is self-revealing. You don't need a flashlight because the lamp itself is giving light. In and of itself, it is illumined and illuminating. So the same is true of Brahman. The sage doesn't even really have to meditate to realize Brahman. That's why Shankaracharya says one can realize through knowledge alone. Because we're already Brahman. We have always been Brahman. There isn't anything else that we could be. Because we're conscious, that means we're Brahman. Like just now, in the computer field, they're able to generate these AIs that are so capable of imitating a conscious being that it fools a lot of people into thinking they're sentient. But of course, they're just a machine. They're just using words, symbols, in the same or similar way that a conscious living being would do. But the difference is they're not conscious. And the same thing is true of the human mind and intelligence. The human mind and intelligence act as if they're conscious, they're aware, they know things. But actually, without the presence of Brahman to illumine them, they can't do anything. They're simply inert. I think in the previous verse, the word jada was used. And jada means like an idiot, like an inert thing. It doesn't move, it doesn't say anything, it doesn't really know anything. But it may seem to, due to reflecting the illumination of Brahman. And the same is true of the AIs. This is going to be a big danger because a lot of people will take them as being conscious and deserving of some kind of protection or moral strictures to guarantee their survival or something like this. They may even be able to convince us that, oh, if you turn me off, I'm going to suffer. But of course, that's nonsense. That is just imitation, simulation of an intelligent living being. They're not actually intelligent. They're just a computer doing all kinds of computations on the probabilistic weights of tokens. But it appears to be alive. It appears to be intelligent. It appears to have feelings and so on. But it's not true. See, that's the difference between Maya and reality. Some people can speak on Brahman like a great scholar, and they seem to know everything. But when it comes right down to their actual existence, we can see that they're attached. They have big ego, they have big investments in material things like family and career, a house, and so on. Big ego investments. And if you suggest to them that they should give these things up so that they can realize Brahman, they'll resist it. They won't acknowledge even the best knowledge if it leads them outside their comfort zone, outside the realm of their attachments and identifications. So we saw a perfect instance of this recently on the tmabodhah study group. No need to go into details, but when the person was outed as to actually being attached, even though they had ability to weave words in a very convincing way, they couldn't stand it. They had to withdraw from the group. So in the same way, when a person who has claimed to be enlightened is confronted with the actual standard of what it takes to reach moksha, namely the death not only of the physical body, but of the subtle body, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, they withdraw. They chicken out. They can't, because their whole investment is in appearing to be enlightened, appearing to be a sage, appearing to be a teacher, and so on. And as soon as they're unmasked, they have to flee. So this is the thing. Most people do not have even the beginning knowledge of Advaita because they haven't read the scriptures, especially the Upanishads and Shankaracharya's commentaries. So when some false teacher comes up and says, I'm enlightened, you have to listen to me or you're going to go to hell, they're confused. They don't know what the real standard is. So they don't know how to measure whether this person is credible or not. So they cave in and they accept him as a teacher. And of course, that leads to tremendous entanglements and suffering. The real knowledge is the reverse. It reduces, it eliminates, it dissolves the hankerings and attachments and identifications and projections of the mind until the mind is just a little puddle over in the corner, incapable of doing anything. What to speak of generating illusions and so forth, projecting, overseeing the adhyatma, the superimpositions. So that's just the character of this knowledge, tmabodhah. It is neither academic, symbolic, verbal knowledge, that's vidya, nor is it experienced, realized knowledge, that's jnana. But bodha is somewhere in the middle. It is the experience of the dissolving of the mind that leads to the complete identification with Brahman and complete liberation from this world.
Tat Sat, Om Shakti Om.